Magazine, we got South Carolina. Bingo, yeah. So, hey, there's a lot to like about Shane Beamer and everything they're doing in Columbia. This is another one. This is my favorite thing about the preseason, Stephen. I try to hint at it, but all these fan bases, they're all on cloud nine, and I love it because they should be. There's a lot to like about the improvements of these teams, and no exception. I mean, we got South Carolina fans out here thinking they can win the East, and hell, who knows? I mean, if everything goes right, I'm not picking them to win the East, but they got Spencer Rattler now, and I think that's a huge, huge upgrade. So, what's your overall thoughts on the Gamecocks after they pulled a couple upsets? They stunned the hell out of me winning the bowl game. I did not see that coming.
Especially in the fashion that it did. I mean,
Right.
they totally dominated North Carolina along the line of scrimmage. I think the positives for South Carolina is what you mentioned at the end of the year, trending up, trending in the right direction. So I think certainly that combined with the transfer portal addition says to me that this program is headed in the right direction. I like the Spencer Rattler pickup. I think first of all, not everything at Oklahoma was his fault last year. His yards per attempt declined. The big plays weren't there. Some of that was offensive line. Some of that was the rushing game for Oklahoma was not as good as it was. So some of those things are on him. Not all of it. He's got to be the most talented quarterback South Carolina's had in a long time, right?
Maybe ever.
Yeah, and not to mention you've seen the revolving door they had it. I mean, they were probably trying to check and see if you and I had some eligibility left at the end of the year. But I mean, I think they are in a much better position offensively. And I would also say keep an eye on the receiver transfers. Wells from James Madison, Rucker from Arkansas State. That is a much deeper receiving core than they've had in the last year to go with Josh Vann, Jaheim Bell at tight end. To me, the interesting thing about South Carolina is we're going to spend all offseason talking about Spencer Rattler and all that. I still think the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball is really where this team is going to have to improve if they want to make that jump to join Tennessee and Kentucky in that middle of the SEC.
And they also got a transfer. I think his name's Reed, the defensive back. That a lot of people love that guy. I think he could be a true impact player. But let me ask you this, Stephen. A little going off the side here. What is one thing that Arkansas and Ole Miss had in common last season, aside from exceeding expectations? A big reason why, in my opinion. Do you have any idea what I'm hinting at here? And it applies to South Carolina this upcoming year.
I don't. You want to hit me with it?
According to your magazine, 15 super seniors on South Carolina's roster. Yeah. And I think we have proven in the short time that we've had these super seniors that, experience can beat talent. And you hit on, I mean, no one is looking at South Carolina's roster and saying, well, this is the best roster in the East. We can't go that far. But last year, no one was saying that against Arkansas. No one was saying that about Ole Miss. And yet experience really won out for those two. So that's just another thing that I look at South Carolina and I think maybe we got something here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Not to mention, we've talked about the transfer pickups. I think also the second year of that coaching staff. Like, the culture of that program, especially under Shane Beamer, seems to be very strong, and they seem to have a good thing going. I think it's everything to me says South Carolina is trending in the right direction. I think they could be a better team this year, but it also might just be 6-7 wins. It might not be to 8 because of the schedule that they have to face and some of the question marks that they have on super seniors specifically. You and I talked about this last year, and I do think teams are, more veteran teams. You're seeing it in the overall 131 of why teams are so close together and trying to sort some of these out. Like the difference between 15 and 35 is probably pretty small because rosters are older. Transfer portal additions have, made teams. It's a lot easier for teams to fill kind of gaps on their roster because of that.
Now, let me ask you one final thing about South Carolina, Stephen. Tougher game here at Kentucky, October 8th, or home for Tennessee, November 19th, second to last game of the season.
Man, the interesting thing about the game against Tennessee is they go to Florida the week before, and then they have to go to Clemson the week after. So the end of the season is not easy, especially when you have that rivalry. I'll have to stick, it's a tough one because you're going on the road to play Kentucky, but you also get Tennessee at home. Man, that's like 50-50 of that one. I would probably still say Tennessee just because I think they're the better team. But,
Gotcha.
if we're trying to project how South Carolina may get to 7-8 wins, like picking off Tennessee at home is one of those games they're probably going to have to get because I think winning on the road in Lexington, not impossible, but I think you'd like to get Tennessee at home at the end of the year.
Right, and I mean, South Carolina fans, they've got Georgia and Clemson in their sights, but really, realistically, these are the teams: Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee. That's got to be your focus right now, getting over that hill before you can get to the elite of the elite, which I know there was a time you owned Clemson and there was a time you go back and forth with Georgia, but you got to climb that ladder before you can get quite that high. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was just thinking as we're talking here, they face Clemson, Texas A&M, and Georgia, which are three of our top 5 in the country. So at the end of the year, we're going to South Carolina's fans and coaches should be able to tell us, where these teams stack up nationally. I mean, it is a very difficult schedule. It's also, it's life in the SEC.
Right.
There really isn't an easy schedule. There's some easy crossovers some year, but when you play at Arkansas, host Texas A&M, that's probably one of the tougher crossovers in the East. So I think it gets at kind of the point I think you and I are probably getting at here, which I think South Carolina is getting better. I just don't know that they end up being 8-4, 9-3. If they do, it's probably because Spencer Rattler really hits and then offensive line improves, and same thing for their defensive front.
Mm-hmm. All right, next. Best for next to last.